Yes, I like to put a murder or a dead body or something.
Where at?
In the alley.
You ever have one of those days where you accidentally make your dog cereal because you pour the fucking dog food in the wrong bowl, the bowl that water is already in? It's one of those kind of fucking days, guys. It's one of those kind of fucking days. I've been choking on bong hits all morning, and I figured I would make a video about nothing. So let's get into it, shall we? You guys remember PictoChat on the DS Lite? That shit was like, that was like the precursor to sexting. That was like, you know, before you're like a preteen, before you're even, before you're a teenager, you're a preteen, but before even that point, you're something else. Like, you know what the fuck is up, but you're not really, you're still a kid. Regardless, when I would say 4th, 5th grade, I was playing on the DS Lite, right? Everybody had a DS Lite. Everybody from my time or generation anyway. And we would all bring these things to school or day camp, whichever, if it were summer. But I remember PictoChat being a very essential part of my childhood, because PictoChat was how you got bitches, fam. That's right. I got bitches on PictoChat. Now, the way to fucking finesse these thoughts, the way that I was doing it anyways, was we would keep the DS Lite inside of our desk during class time, and then we would pretend as if we were going into our desk to get something, because we had these like fold open desks. You know elementary school, right? And I would keep my DS just inside of that shit. And we would all be texting each other during the session. Like, the teacher would just be up, like, talking about whatever bullshit he was talking about. It was his last year being a teacher. He retired after that, so he didn't take shit seriously. I had a great 5th grade year. That was my last year at elementary school. Now, I know, like, most people go to elementary school, like, until 6th grade. In my, like, city, 6th grade and 7th grade are the middle school, and then 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th, 12th, that was the high school. Typically, middle school is just 7th and 8th grade, but my town works differently. Regardless, we were top shit at the school because we were the oldest age. Our teacher was gonna retire that year. It was a pretty laid back year. He let us do whatever we want. I remember, like, it was a big rule. You couldn't have your hat on in school, but he would let us have our hoods up, and I would just pretend to be putting my head down, but I would have my hood up, and I would pretend as if I was just resting or whatever, but I would have headphones on, and I'd be listening to my iPod Nano, not paying attention at all to class. I was a little fuck. We also used to, that was the first year where we would grade each other's papers. Now, I'm not necessarily sure if that's something that's even allowed or legal, but frequently in school, they did. Like we would all grade each other's papers. That would make up for the teacher having to do work, and it would kill a lot of class time. So I can see why a teacher would want to do that, but just like how there's doctor-patient confidentiality, I would assume that you're not supposed to be spreading your grades with other students if you don't want to be. So some teachers would have the students' papers, or certain students would have the teacher grade their paper because they were uncomfortable with people grading their papers. Regardless, this teacher was laid back as fuck, and we were able to get away with a lot. And I always thought it was just hilarious that we were basically texting each other before any of us had cell phones. It's very interesting what gaming consoles are capable of achieving. Not many people know, not many parents know that in giving your child a controller, you're also giving your child access to the internet, because any PS3 or PS4, Xbox 360 or Xbox One has an internet browser with straight access to anything. If you wanted to watch porn on your television while your parents were at work, you could very easily do so. You could do all sorts of things. And that leads me to my next topic of conversation. Aside from just having the ability to text as a child, when I was grounded away from having a cell phone as a teenager, my dad was a dick. My parents were divorced. I would go between my dad's house and I would go between my mom's house. And basically my dad was Hitler and my mom would give me whatever I wanted. So that makes for a very sneaky child. A very, very sneaky child, because when you're allowed to do anything at one house, you're going to learn how to get away with doing anything at the other. And I'm very grateful that I was put in a position like that, because it's made me very slick and sly when it comes to everyday life. Regardless, after having my DSi or my 3DS, I was then able to get straight web browser access from my DS. So honestly, I didn't give a fuck when they took my cell phone away, because they wouldn't take my Nintendo DS away. They thought I was just playing Pokemon. And the thing folds in half like a clamshell. If you wanted to get a hold of somebody and you had your phone taken away, or you needed to get on the internet for something, you could just log right onto Facebook. And I would message people on my 3DS XL. The only disadvantage to doing so was having to type with a stylus and tap on that screen. It's not designed for thumbprint. There's not much of a good typing screen on a Nintendo DS, because it isn't necessarily intended for that. But I remember being able to get away with so much, and being able to have so much access to things that my parents probably did not know that I had access to as a child. Being able to get internet access, being able to text people. I remember having PictoChat on the school bus. It wasn't actually like a school bus, it was a tour bus, because the school had rented a tour bus to go on a field trip. And the field trip took us somewhere that was 3+ hours away. And so on the bus, everybody brought their iPods and their Nintendo DS. Now, this is the time before the iPod Touch, and this is the time we were all young. It was before everybody had like cell phones. This was around the time where the iPhone was just coming out. I remember when I was in 5th grade, the iPad was announced. Everybody still basically had flip phones at this point in time for the next year or so. And then people started to get those sliding phones where they would have a keyboard on them. Regardless, nobody was really having cell phones, especially not on your 5th grade school trip. Most people just had their DS Lite. And we would all be in a PictoChat chat room. And I remember when I was a child, the teachers would tell us to be careful of chat rooms and certain things on the internet. And I'm very curious whether the teachers are aware of things like Omegle now, where a child can basically just go and, or just anybody, doesn't matter if they're a fucking child, regardless, you can just go on the internet and shift through people just on webcams or chat roulette. I'll have a whole episode about Omegle and chat roulette soon. But that shit was fucking crazy. You had to surf through a lot of dicks to get to anything good, but there was some very interesting stuff on there. Regardless, we're all on the school trip, and we were all PictoChatting each other, and somebody narked because people were putting inappropriate stuff in the PictoChat, and then there were goody two-shoe kids like in the group chat as well, and we all got in trouble. And I remember there was also like DS download play, so if we didn't have certain games, a lot of us would play with each other. Typically we would all just battle Pokemon and do things, because that was when 4th generation was a thing. This was during like the Diamond and Pearl era of Pokemon. But I remember us all playing Mario Kart and stuff like that, and the teacher like cracked down and got into, like, somebody snitched and showed their DS to the teacher, and she didn't understand that we were basically all capable of being in our own chat room on our DS. No, it wasn't fair connection. It wasn't like anything on the internet, but it was funny when given the power what deviant children turn into. When I was at day camp, we would do similar things and communicate with each other during movie time on our Nintendo DS, because we wouldn't be talking, but we would be communicating with each other or texting basically on the DS, or drawing each other's pictures and sending them back and forth. But it was awesome just having so much power and capability as a child, that I'm sure these are things that a lot of you either did too or didn't do. And a lot of our parents had like PlayStation 1s and Nintendo 64s when they were children, or Super Nintendos if your parents are older, and Nintendos regardless. They weren't capable of going on the internet or messaging each other or doing anything like that. Nowadays, I wish I was a kid growing up with modern technology now. I wish I was a kid who had an iPod Touch when he was a kid, because we would be capable of doing so much more. We would have so much more power, and who knows what stuff I would have learned at a maybe too young of an age. I already had so much power as a child that it definitely put me ahead of children. I was definitely the kid on the playground teaching people about boobs.